Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. We begin with our continuing Decision 2025 coverage. Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre are not only running against each other to be the next Prime Minister of Canada in this election, the Liberal and Conservative leaders are also virtually running beside each other in Ottawa area ridings that are adjacent. APTN's Fraser Needham caught up with some of the candidates running against Carney and Poilievre.
The Nepean riding is in the west end of Ottawa and mainly contains a large suburb of Barrhaven. Chandra Arya is currently the sitting MP of the riding, but has been forced out by the Liberals to make way for Mark Carney. We catch up with Sham Shukla, a federal civil servant running for the NDP, at a coffee shop in Barrhaven. Shukla says the issues on the minds of voters in this riding include affordability and the federal government's return to office mandate.
Issues like housing, like transit.
He says the task of running against the Prime Minister is no doubt daunting, but feels the NDP is the best party to stand up for regular working people like himself.
It's to improve government and to ensure that a lot of local issues are not overlooked. I just go back to that. I think regardless of who the winner is in this riding, I think I'll be able to continue to highlight that and keep the focus on issues that matter to people in their everyday lives.
Green candidate Greg Hopkins is a longtime Barrhaven resident who works as a youth councillor. We meet him at the Matahookie farm, where he says he's running a low-key campaign. With the Trump tariffs dominating the campaign, Hopkins admits it is difficult to get important environmental issues on the agenda.
Sea levels are rising, forests are on fire, food's drying up.
As far as running against Mark Carney, he says he is taking the challenge in stride and happy to do it.
I'm thrilled to be able to run against a Prime Minister. So it's got my kids interested in politics now. My 15-year-old says, well, the next election I'll be 18 and I'm running. And I said, that's awesome. So this is it's pretty cool.
The Carleton riding is in the southwest part of the city, below the Nepean riding. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been elected in variations of the riding since 2004. In this election, a total of 91 candidates are running, most of them independents. We catch up with small businessman and Liberal candidate Bruce Fanjoy at his campaign office in Stittsville.
Overwhelmingly, the issue is the Canada-U.S. relationship and how we...
Fanjoy says the key issue of this campaign is who can best stand up to Donald Trump, and Pierre Poilievre is not up for the job.
Our parliamentary democracy requires everyone, even if you're Pierre Poilievre, to win your riding. And he's held this riding for a long time, has accomplished nothing, neither for the riding or for the country, and it's a record that he needs to be held to account for.
Out for some nearby door knocking, area resident Mohammed Chowdhury calls himself a swing voter but says he is leaning Liberal because of the tariffs issue.
I was looking at the background and the strength in between our MP, who is PAP, and Carney, and it looks like Carney is much more deserved to be the next Prime Minister because of the tariff war that's happening in between US and Canada.
Different varieties of herbs, vegetables.
Mark Watson, also a small businessman, is running for the Greens, and we meet up with him at his acreage in Dunrobin. He says with climate change a key issue, the Conservatives and Poilievre are headed in the wrong direction.
This riding needs a better choice after 7 terms, and quite frankly, the planet needs a better choice. We've got, the leader of the opposition who believes we need to continue exploiting our fossil fuels to pay for all his ambitious programs. This is the industry of yesterday.
APTN reached out to Nepean Conservative candidate Barbara Ball and Carleton NDP candidate Beth Prokaska, but did not hear back by airtime. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Now to the northwestern Ontario riding of Thunder Bay Superior North. APTN's Mike McDonald had a chance to talk with 2 of the candidates looking to represent the riding, which is home to many First Nations.
With close to 20 First Nations within the boundary of Thunder Bay Superior North and a large urban Indigenous population in the city of Thunder Bay, the Indigenous vote could prove to be the deciding factor in this federal election, especially as the riding is identified by the AFN as one that could swing depending on the Indigenous vote. Liberal incumbent and Minister of Indigenous Services Patty Haidu says reconciliation is what she's hearing about on the campaign.
What I'm hearing increasingly from First Nations communities, not just in my riding, but across the country, is a desire to become more engaged in political systems that are not First Nations political systems, because they see the deep connections between getting their priorities achieved with a government that actually cares and understands about the importance of reconciliation.
New Democrat Joy Wakefield acknowledges the unique perspectives among Indigenous voters while touting the party's Indigenous candidates.
Some people take the perspective that this is a colonial system and they don't want to participate, and I understand that. And some people take the position that whatever power they have, they want to use to make sure that it doesn't harm their people. You know, we've seen a lot of strong Indigenous representation coming from this party. Saul Mamakwa provincially. We see Tanya Cameron running out in Kenora, Laura Mayer running down in Algoma.
Haidu says there's still a lot more work to do with regard to mending the relationship with First Nations, adding she will continue those efforts if re-elected.
One of the most fulfilling aspects of the work that I've done over the last 9.5 years, including in the last 3.5 as Minister of Indigenous Services, is forming deep and real relationships with First Nations and Indigenous partners. That's, to me, an essential ingredient in maintaining the strength of our democracy, is that people feel that those systems actually see them and are representing them.
Wakefield says access to safe drinking water remains an issue in some First Nations communities in the riding, as well as access to services such as health care.
Healthcare and access, especially in a lot of the rural communities, is being able to access services, having them in a place that's close enough to where they are, and making sure that their interests are heard in Ottawa.
The Liberals have held the Thunder Bay Superior North riding since 2015. Former Thunder Bay Police Chief Bob Herman carries the Conservative banner in this election. He did not reply to our requests for an interview. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Thunder Bay.
Now to the newly formed riding of Sault Ste. Marie Algoma. APTN's Mike McDonald spoke with two of the candidates looking to represent a riding where the ongoing trade dispute with the U.S. is especially felt.
Sault Ste. Marie sits on the Canada-U.S. border and is heavily reliant on the steel industry. The federal riding of Sault Ste. Marie Algoma is also home to a number of First Nations communities. Liberal Terry Sheehan has represented the former riding of Sault Ste. Marie since 2015 and has long had a connection with the local First Nations community.
My wife and kids are members of Batchewana First Nation, so it's a very personal thing for me as well. So I plan on serving the First Nation communities, the Indigenous communities, the urban Indigenous residents that are here in some of the communities that are attached to First Nations around Canada.
Laura Mayer carries the NDP banner into this election. Mayer is from Mississauga First Nation, where she currently serves as a band councillor.
I know the issues very well. I was the senior political advisor for the Nishnawbek Nation. I worked within Mississauga First Nation for quite a long time. And from anywhere from healthcare to housing to economic development to justice, I have a really deep understanding of what the issues are for First Nations communities.
Sheehan says one of the issues he'll focus on if re-elected will be economic development.
Economic and business development, I see opportunity everywhere, especially in the Indigenous communities. There are so many great ideas, great businesses. I work very well with a number of Indigenous businesses, helping them grow. I used to work in helping them start, but also skill development too.
Mayer says there are a pair of issues that she's heard about from Indigenous and non-Indigenous voters while on the campaign trail.
There's two things I think that unify all of the people that I've spoken to. One is tariffs and economic instability, wondering about ensuring that our economy is protected, that our jobs are protected. And the other thing that's unifying is healthcare, that people are, very focused on trying to get primary health care. They might not have a family doctor.
Sault Ste. Marie Algoma is one of the swing ridings recently identified by the Assembly of First Nations. Former Sault Ste. Marie Police Chief Hugh Stevenson is running for the Conservatives. He did not respond to our request for an interview. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Sault Ste. Marie.
Still to come tonight, we'll continue our look at ridings across the country. Stick around. Welcome back. One region in Saskatchewan has created its election boundaries since the last federal election. With just one riding covering most of northern Saskatchewan, candidates are pushing for meaningful change in a region calling for action. Rachel May looks at the candidates in Desnethy, Missinippi, Churchill River electoral district.
The Assembly of First Nations says whoever wins Desnethy, Missinippi, Churchill River could be decided by First Nation voters. Conservative Gary Vidal held Desnethy, Missinippi, Churchill since 2019. In 2021, he crushed Liberal Buckley Belanger 10,000 votes to 5,500. However, Loon Lake, Pierceland, and Meadow Lake, where Vidal is from, are now a completely new riding, Battleford's Lloydminster Meadow Lake. So Vidal isn't running again. He says MPs should live in the riding they're elected in. Jim Lemeg from Clearwater River Dene Nation near La Loche is carrying the torch for the Conservatives this time around. Lemeg is a former RCMP officer. He was a Saskatchewan Party MLA from 2022 to 2024. He says more must be done to ensure Indigenous people in the North get what they need.
When we think about Jordan's principle, and right now what communities are experiencing are a backlog of paperwork that needs to be done. That's something that needs to be addressed. And that's a policy that I'm looking at and thinking that needs to change.
Lemeg says growing up in northern Saskatchewan and healing from intergenerational trauma drives his commitment to represent the riding.
And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, so I can give back to the people of northern Saskatchewan.
Buckley Belanger is the Liberal candidate. He was born in Isle La Crosse. He was the town's mayor between 1988 and 1994. He was the MLA for the Liberals and the NDP for the area between 1995 and 2021. He is Métis and says the Liberals have proven they're serious about helping all Canadians, including Indigenous people.
The Liberal Party has been trying to reconcile with a lot of the Indigenous communities across the country, and we've seen evidence of that reconciliation, but now we must move to the next level.
Belanger says the riding is vast and diverse, and he wants Indigenous voices to be heard on a larger scale.
This is our opportunity. We have such a lot of possibilities coming forward. I say to them that I have the experience, I have the passion, I have the drive to make sure we go and represent our people.
NDP candidate Doug Racine is Métis. He served in the military for 12 years before practicing law for 25. Racine says he can bring a fresh perspective to what Indigenous people truly need.
We have to give them the resources. The First Nations are ready to do the heavy lifting. They just need a little bit of help. And I think that's going to be by honoring the treaties and taking another look at the NRTA.
When discussing the main issues facing the riding, Racine said there's no time for inaction and certain issues must be addressed immediately.
I think it has to be designated a crisis, the housing crisis, the homelessness crisis, the drug and alcohol crisis. It has to be designated that, and we need emergency funding up here ASAP.
All three candidates have identified housing insecurity and addictions as top priorities. Election Day in Canada is Monday, April 28th, 2025. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
There was tension in the press room during last week's federal debate in Montreal over question period. But as APTN Savannah Craig reports, some also took issue with a reporter's question stating unmarked graves and burial sites remain disproven and unproven.
Turmoil broke out in the press room after the federal English debate last Thursday night, following the announcement that the debate commission would be cancelling question period with the federal leaders.
I'm sorry to announce that there will be no scrum tonight with the leaders because we don't feel that we can actually guarantee a proper environment for this activity.
Frustration was directed towards Rebel News.
Look at all of you. What journalistic rationale is there to have this many people in the room?
With some journalists reacting negatively to questions asked by this outlet.
I blame you 100% for the Q&A being cancelled.
This follows unrest between some journalists during question period the night before at the French language debate.
Drea Humphrey with Rebel News.
Okay.
Your party...
You know where I'm going to go with this, all right?
Can I speak?
Yeah, you can. I'm just going to say you know where I'm going to go with it, though.
One question by Rebel News reporter Drea Humphrey to NDP leader Jagmeet Singh focused on unmarked graves and burial sites.
These claims have been disproven by bands that excavated and remain unproven by those that have not.
Singh refused to answer Humphrey.
Your question is another example of why I don't respond to agencies like Rebel News that promote misinformation and disinformation.
Kimberly Murray is the former special interlocutor to unmarked graves and burial sites. She disagrees with the Rebel News reporter.
It's so hurtful and re-traumatizing to survivors who are the living witnesses and who experienced witnessing the deaths in the institution.
Murray's role was to independently engage with survivors, Indigenous families, and communities that are recovering missing children and unmarked burials.
There's photographs of children being buried. There's photographs of funerals taking place where no parents were there.
The Debate Commission denied Rebel News from receiving accreditation in 2019 and 2021. But both years, Rebel News took the Debate Commission to federal court, which allowed it to attend the debates. APTN News reached out to the Debate Commission to confirm why Rebel News was granted accreditation for this debate. It did not respond to our request before our deadline. Canadian Association of Journalists President Brent Jolly says his organization is monitoring the situation.
This isn't just about alternative media. This is about building an alternative universe where some of these ideas and myths or theories are advanced, and the sort of disinformation environment that we're seeing spread on a whole host of topics, including residential school denialism.
APTN News reached out to Drea Humphrey for an on-camera interview to clarify her position, but she insisted on only providing a written response to questions supplied ahead of time. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
For all of its size, the Northwest Territories only has one riding. We'll profile that riding after the break. Welcome back to the Northwest Territories now, where Yellowknife video journalist Bruce De La Cruz gives us an idea of what the candidates there are doing as voting day closes in.
The Northwest Territories is home to over 40,000 people and is the second largest federal riding after Nunavut, covering over 1.3 million square kilometers. Many problems plague the riding, including substance abuse, environmental issues, and the price of food. But what will candidates tackle first if they are elected? For Liberal Party candidate Rebecca Alty, who was born and raised in Yellowknife and until now was the city's mayor, the ongoing drug crisis is one of her main concerns.
And so really a two-pronged approach is one is on the enforcement side, and so the Liberal Party is looking to hire 1,000 more RCMP, 1,000 more customs officers to be able to reduce the drugs coming into the country. On the other side is the support for addictions, for the trauma healing. So one of the things we recently announced was $7 million for the wellness, for the healing center with the Dene Wellness Warriors.
Green Party candidate Rainbow Eyes is a member of the Danakdao Awitlala First Nation and currently lives in British Columbia. She says affordable housing and social services for underrepresented groups are at the top of her list.
Nobody should be paying like over 50% of their income on their rent, but that's the fact, you know. But I think along with that, the wellness of the people as well for social services, like dentistry for the small communities, as well as to us LGBTQ support. I think the wellness of the people should come, you know, with the economy and the wellness of the economy.
NDP candidate Kelvin Kachilier, who is Tlicho and lives in Yellowknife, has also narrowed it down to affordability, but wants to tackle healthcare and infrastructure as well.
With healthcare, we're heavily reliant on the Alberta government when it comes to programs and services, which is very unfortunate, knowing that we're in 2025 and these services have decreased across the board. But when it comes to infrastructure, we have a lot of aging buildings within our communities. A good example would be water treatment plants that are all going to be due relatively all at the same time, which is going to be in the millions of dollars.
With Indigenous people representing nearly half of the total population of the Northwest Territories, we asked each candidate why Indigenous voters should cast their votes for them.
I would, as I said, follow my own traditions to be a voice for the people. And I would listen first, and I would grow community and bring people together, because from my experiences, this is what we need right now more than anything, more than policy.
Yeah, I would say that it's, you know, my focus on the big issues that we are facing. So the drug crisis, settling land claims, and growing capacity in Indigenous governments to take on more and more authority.
And the winner of this election, and I would love to be quoted by this, will be dictated by the communities. And there's a lot of people hurting, suffering, frustrated. And if you truly want change, come out and vote. Because I'm going to be putting the best that I can, and I can promise you that I'm going to give it my all.
APTN News attempted to contact Conservative candidate Kimberly Fairman, but did not receive confirmation for an interview. Election Day is April 28th. Voters in Yellowknife can come to the Chateau Nova Hotel at 4571 48th Street. Be sure to bring 2 pieces of accepted ID, which includes a driver's license and a passport. For a full list of accepted ID, go online at www.elections.ca. Bruce De La Cruz, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this weekend. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. And please be sure to join us Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Decision 2025 coverage of this federal election. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day.